Anyway, so as Erin said, we'll be starting this morning with the Capstone reporting session. So this is just a training. So each one of the grants, or each one of you, will end up writing a capstone report at the end of your project. So you may have heard this referred to as the how-to guide, and it's exactly that. So the capstone report is essential for someone that is looking to replicate your project moving forward. So these capstone reports, once you submit them, will live on our Nutrition Aging Resource website. That'll be a place where individuals can go and determine what project they may want to replicate, and then your guide will help them do that moving forward. So I'll be walking through each part of the capstone report template, or each page of it, and then provide some resources at the end for you. And then for our 2019 grantees, I'll be also walking through those due dates, since that's just now around the corner. We'll of course leave a little bit of time at the end for questions if you have questions at the end. Okay, so this is just for our 2019 INNU grantee cohort, these dates. I just wanted to walk through that so we're all clear on what this looks like moving forward. So if you are a 2019 grantee and without a no-cost extension, the first draft of your capstone report will be due November 1st. So that will just be submitted to me via email. And then I will provide feedback to you within 3 weeks and then get that back to your grantee team. And then after you revise, make those edits, then if you could get that back to myself via email, your project officer at ACL, whether that be Judy, Simon, Shannon, Leisha, or Donna, and then of course uploaded to Grant Solutions by December 31st. So December 31st will be your final due date for this capstone report. If you are, however, looking at a no-cost extension, I just wanted to point out that these due dates will vary pending the length of time of that no-cost extension. So I just put up the calendar here. So each one of you received this calendar. I suppose that might be a while back for many of you, but you would have received that with your initial grant announcement. If you need a copy of that, please feel free to email and I can get that out to you. But as you're looking at those dates, let's say, for example, you're looking for a no-cost extension for 3 months. Well, that capstone report, that date that's listed on that calendar, would then be backed up by 3 months. So you're just looking 3 months later than what's written on that calendar. And then I know we've had a couple questions about the end of grant period and payment. And I just wanted to note here that it's going to be important that you talk to your fiscal staff regarding what that looks like specifically for your organization as far as timelines and payment. So those are the due dates for our 2019 grantee cohort. This slide, I just wanted to point out, so everything that you'll be seeing over the next hour is now within our website. So if you go to acl.gov/senior-nutrition/models, it'll take you to our innovations page. If you scroll down, the box you see on the left is what you'll run into. So here we've got both PDF and Word versions of this capstone report template that I'll get to. The capstone report one-pager, which I'll talk about, and then a 508 compliance guide. So all of this is now housed on our website, which is really exciting. And you can actually use the Word version of this template, download that directly, and then that'll be the template that you start plugging and playing into. So again, that's on our website. Okay, so the title page is our first page. Imagine that. All right. So I do want to note throughout all of the report pages, you're going to see yellow highlight and gray highlight. So that yellow highlight are formatting notes. So whether that be bullet point format, keeping a section to 1 to 2 sentences. It'll also give you the page limit within that yellow highlight. So that's what you'll see throughout the document. After you've plugged and played your information, feel free to take off that yellow highlight, because obviously we won't need that in the final product. The gray highlight is going to be example text. So that was our way to indicate to you some examples that you might find useful as you're inputting your own information. So with that information, you can simply, just click on it, highlight it, input your information, and then take off that gray highlight. So that's what you'll see throughout these next couple pages. So as far as information, so first we have the grant project name. So I just want to make sure that everybody has an idea of what we mean by that. So you obviously have a name for your project, but we really want it to be descriptive in nature for this report. So for example, Life Care Alliance 60 plus or EHRI We Care. So that's the name of your project. But if you are going to our website and looking at all the projects listed, we want to make sure there's a little bit more of a description within that title. So if somebody heard about your project at a conference and remembered that description but not so much the title, they would be able to easily identify it on our website. So just providing a little bit more description. So the example we have here, instead of just the Iowa Cafe, we named it the Iowa Cafe AAA and Restaurant Partnership. Just gives a little bit more of the detail as to what that project was about. Then we have principal investigator and your authors. For each of those sections, we ask that you list that individual's their name, their credential, title, and organization. And then data report, you'll simply fill that in. And then of course we have our ACL disclaimer, and you'll just be sure to fill that in with your correct INNU grantee number. We just ask that you keep the fonts and the size of the fonts the same that you see throughout the document. Okay, then table of contents page, that'll be pretty simple moving forward. I'll go through it just so that you know the topics that we'll be covering here. So background and purpose, partners and project staff, funding and sustainability, recruitment, tools, project timeline, frequently asked questions, advice for replication, and then an appendix list. Okay, so the background and purpose page. So first we want you to start with the goal of your project, simple 1 to 2 sentence of your goal. Next we'll have objectives. So again, keeping these in bullet point format, what the objectives of your project were. And then the overview of your project. So we have written here 3 to 5 sentences. We just really want that broad picture of what your overview of your project is. And last but not least, we have project results. So also here we have 3 to 5 sentences, or you can do it in bullet point format. So again, really concise, to the point, what you feel was most important for your project results, or really what you feel represents the work that you did, but being broad. Also for that results page, you can include charts and graphs. As Barb mentioned yesterday, that's a good way to break up the text, so feel free to include charts and graphs here. But with that, we just ask that you submit to us the original data points. So if you submitted, or to create that chart or graph, if you utilized an Excel spreadsheet, if you could just send that to us, that would be very helpful. We ask you do that just because if we needed to look at that for branding purposes, recreating that chart or graph to make the Capstone reports under our branding look similar, then Marissa, our communications manager, would be able to do that. So again, if that's possible, we just ask that you send that along with your report. So that's the background and purpose section. Next, we have partners and project staff. So partners and project staff. So the first section here, we have partners. We ask that you, for each partner, you have a bullet point and then a one-sentence descriptor. So within that, the example here. So April's Downtown Diner. That sounds like a name of a restaurant, but we want you, in parentheses, if you could just indicate what that partner is. So here we have restaurant. But for example, if I said NEI 3A and you're not living in the state of Iowa, you might not know that's a AAA. So again, if somebody were looking to replicate your project, we just want them to know exactly what partnership that indicates. So whether that be a restaurant, AAA, university, just a small descriptor within that parentheses. And then just a sentence as to why they are a partner and that relationship. Moving into project staff roles. So the first section here is the number of FTEs or full-time equivalents. So that'll vary project to project. Sometimes that's donated time, sometimes that's paid time, but essentially that's going to be the number of FTEs that were involved in your project or that it took to run the project. And then staff titles and responsibilities is the next section. So again, keeping that in bullet point format and then 1 to 2 sentences per staff role, just that high level responsibility. So our first example here, we've got project manager, oversight of entire project, including develop and monitor contracts, monthly contract with project partners, communication with NRCNA ACL monthly as required, and maintaining IRB approval. So really just those high-level responsibilities of each individual that took part in your project. And then last but not least on this section, if you have an organizational chart for your innovation project, feel free to include that here. We are not looking for an organizational chart of your whole agency, but if you had one for your project, that would be beneficial here as well. Yes.
All staffing regardless of payer source or just the ACL funded?
Yes, all staffing. So whether that be donated time or paid staffing. Yep. Okay, and then moving on to funding and sustainability. So a couple sections here. So the first section is your initial funding. So what did that look like for your project? Everybody here will have the Administration of Community Living Nutrition Innovation Grant, but then what else did that look like? Did you have in-kind match as far as volunteer time, student time, etc.? So initial funding, and then next section is continued funding. So what does that continued funding look like for your project? Is it fee for service, for example, federal, state funding? Again, in-kind match. So we've listed some examples within each of these sections to help drive your writing. But that's that continued funding piece. We are asking that you just be specific with what that looks like. And then the sustainability piece. So what else from your project might you sustain? Are you carrying forward a screening tool, for example? Are you embedding project roles into other job descriptions? So again, all of this will look very different for each project, but that's that sustainability piece of this page. And again, you'll see on each page here the page limit. So that funding and sustainability was no more than 1.5 pages. All right, so on to recruitment. So we broke recruitment out into participants and then volunteers and students if that was applicable to your project. Both are very similar in nature when we move through this page. So as far as participants, you'll list the requirements of your participants. So Older Americans Act nutrition program participant, age 60 plus, for example. And then we also ask that you include what recruitment methods were used, and then breaking that out into what was successful and not successful. Again, looking at this through the lens of someone that's looking to replicate your project and helping them replicate this the best that they can. So what was successful and not successful, just providing that header of information. So example, client testimonials and marketing piece, and then describing why that was successful or not successful. Same information for volunteers, so listing the volunteer requirement. If you had a specific age group you were looking for, 20, for example, 20 years old or over, if they had to commit to a certain time frame to be a part of a volunteer for your grant, and then what was successful or not successful with volunteer recruitment or students. Again, you're only listing that information if you did utilize volunteers or students. And then the final piece of the recruitment is just general marketing. Again, what was successful or not successful, and breaking that out into the header of what that looks like for your projects. So for example, here we have the local newspaper, and then newspaper heard about the project, reached out to grantee to feature in an article. This led to 30 client leads. It's an example we have listed there. So this section will be no more than 2 pages. Yes.
For recruitment, in some of our previous sessions, we also talked about recruiting participants in the program. So would this section also cover our clients who participated in the study?
Yes, that is this section. Definitely. Okay. Yes, Paul.
If there's a topic, and I can't see that, but if there's a topic that just doesn't seem to apply, would you still list that and then write NA or something?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I would say for every project, some aspect of all of these topics would apply. I really think that they all would apply to each project. You may not have as much to write, but that's okay, given there's a page limit. But I do think each topic would pertain. Okay. All right, I'll keep moving through here. So next section here is tools. So we broke this out into 2 sections, the first being technology. So technology for a wide variety of audiences, right? That technology could be technology that you use to streamline your work as a grantee or organization. It can be technology that you provided to the participants or the participants had to have in order to be in your study or your project. It could be technology, again, that you used, whether that be RedCap, Senior Dine, applications, data programs. So this covers the whole spectrum of really any technology that you used within your project. Again, we're just breaking that out, or breaking it down to have you list what piece of technology that was, and then the description of it. So our first example here, Senior Dine. That's a program to track participant meals using a credit card style keychain. Each time a participant eats a meal, the card will be scanned at the food service establishment. Senior Dine has the capability to track whether the meal is dine-in or grab-and-go. So just that little blurb of what the description is of the product that you used. And then as far as resources, so this can really capture a variety of resources or tools that you used within your project. Some of the examples we have listed here. The first one is an automatic paper folder. So this was used to fold educational materials for participant binders. This allowed staff to focus their time on more pertinent tasks of the project. So that would be an example resource. Others may be grocery store delivery systems or memberships. All right, and then project timeline. So this next section here, so we're asking that you look at your project year by year, and then within each year, dividing that out into months or seasons, whichever way your brain wraps around that information best is completely fine. So for example, our 2019 grantees, you'll have 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And then our example here within, for example, 2019, we have May 2019, September 2019, and then fall and winter. Here we really only want the high points of your project that were necessary within each year to continue to move forward throughout your project. So some of those high level examples would be that you obtained your 2019 ACL Innovations in Nutrition grant. You obtained letters of commitment from project partners. You obtained IRB approval. You opened 12 cafe restaurant sites. So those high level points of what happened year by year and then within the months or seasons. Okay, that leads us into our frequently asked questions. So we ask that you list 10 questions and responses. So again, viewing this whole report through the lens of someone else that's looking to replicate your project. And I bet if you had that question, they will eventually have that question. So just simply writing that down and answering it as you would for your own project. So again, that's 12 questions and responses, no more than 2 pages here. Okay, and similar, I think similar to the FAQ is our advice for replication. So your words of wisdom, having be the one that completed your grant, we ask that you list up to 5 pieces of advice here. So that can be from you as an individual, it can be from a couple members of your team, your whole team, but feel free to list those as you see fit. So up to 5 pieces of advice. You definitely don't have to do all 5. Just no more than 5, I suppose. Feel free to use quotes as you see appropriate, and then indicating that name of the person that said it, their title, credential, organization, just as you saw on that first slide, the title page. All right. Then we have the appendix list. So this appendix list, we ask that you identify each attachment in alphabetical order. So A, B, C, and then completing that with the name of the document and then a brief description. So that's just going to help, again, someone look at this list. If they've got that up on one screen and then they're going through your materials and the other, quickly identify this is a project flyer and this is where, for example, it was posted. You'll see that we have an extensive list. Once you have this in your own reach on your computer, you'll see that we created an extensive list as to materials to include and what not to include, because not all materials of your project will be included in this report. The only materials that we want included for this report are materials that would be helpful for someone looking to replicate your project. So the materials you wish you would have had once you started your project. So a few examples here, whether that be marketing materials, example contracts, educational materials, a how-to process guide for staff training, intake forms, disclosure forms, survey questions, journal publications. Those would be materials that would be helpful for someone looking to replicate your project. And then as far as the examples that we would not recommend or that we ask that you not share for this report, would be a presentation regarding an overview of your project. So that would be a don't include. But if you are including a presentation that you utilize to train your staff, we ask that you would include that because that would be helpful for someone moving forward. Another example would be just general communications or communications general communications or presentations regarding the project or draft forms of products. So we only want those final products. Okay, so that takes care of the appendix list. Now I just want to touch on how to submit this. So you had your due dates for your 2019 grants, but how to submit the capstone report. So every page that I just walked through is the capstone report, obviously with your information, and this appendix list. So that's going to be one document submitted as a Word document. So everything you just saw. For the attachments or the materials that you're mentioning in your appendix list, we ask that you submit all of those as a separate attachment. So instead of combining all of your attachments into one PDF or one Word document, we want each of those submitted directly. Also with that, we ask that those materials are in their raw but final form. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're submitting a PowerPoint, we want that to come in a PowerPoint format instead of a PDF. Same with a Word document. If your material was in a Word document, submit that as a Word document instead of a PDF form. So that raw but final form. Again, so Marissa, our communications manager, can work her magic on those documents. All right, so that's the appendix list and how to submit the whole report moving forward. Capstone report one pager. So in addition to the template you just saw, we ask that you also submit this one-page document. This should look very similar to what you just saw in the template. It's the exact same page that's within the template that we just walked through. But this, again, like the lightning talks, we can utilize this in a variety of ways. It can be up on our website. We can utilize it for social media purposes, marketing purposes. But this is just that goal, objective, overview of your project, and then the project results. So just a quick snapshot of your project within those 4 highlighted topics. So that will come as a separate document once you complete your final capstone report. Okay. And then I just want to highlight our 508 compliance guide that Marissa created. So this is on our website next to those capstone report documents that I showed previously, or that's actually shown here. Apologize, it's the last resource. This is provided simply for your use. It's not required that you 508 make compliant all of the materials that you're going to submit to us. But if you would like to, or if you would like to use this guide for your reference in a variety of other ways, or your organization, it's there for your use and a resource for you. But Marissa will review the final capstone reports and the appendix list materials that you submit to us at the Nutrition Aging Resource Center for 508 compliance prior to those getting uploaded to our website. So this is a resource for your use. If you do have questions about that, I put Marissa's email on this PowerPoint here, but of course always feel free to reach out to me as well, and I can get you in touch with Marissa if you have questions about that 508 compliance. Okay, so with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have about the capstone report, questions in general. I'm happy to help answer questions as we go. Of course, you know, you can always email me, but thought we'd just open it up to a little bit of Q&A. So thank you so much for letting me walk through that material. This is a new report that we created, so I thought it was important for us to walk through that during our INNU Grantee Conference. Yes, Leslie.
Thank you, Caroline. What about the final performance report?
Yep.
The final performance report that,
Yes. And okay, it looks like Judy might take that question. Thank you, Judy, for joining us.
No, it's coming. Good morning. Okay, this is working. Good. So, let me take you back, big picture, because sometimes that's really helpful, right? So the reports, the semi-annuals and the finals, they're part of the normal ACL report, right? That has a structure. You'll notice when you go to the links for the final report, it's a little different than your semi-annual, and it's very general. And it really, it's required by your federal funder. It's a report. It's different than this capstone. So, you know, Alex and I, as we've shared, we're 2017 grantees, and we really found that our capstone experience was like duplicate of the final report. And that's what we really don't want the capstone to be. The report is part of your grant. It shows you can put a lot of detail in there, all the things that you accomplished, many documents, as you wish, right? So that's telling your funder, this is what we've done with the money, this is how we've accomplished. Different from your capstone. So that's one thing that Caroline and I have been talking about with the attachments and the descriptions that you put in your capstone. Don't throw everything at somebody who's thinking about doing your project, right? It's overwhelming. Don't replicate what you put in your report, which is talking to your funder. Now, for the capstone, you're talking to a peer. How can you do this? Here are the key things you need to know. And so we really do want your capstone to be succinct, so it's very different. I brought up your schedule for 2019, and again, this is, if you have a no-cost extension, you know, it's along with the same thing that the capstone is. So if you get a no-cost extension for 2 months, then you just move out the due dates on the calendar by 2 months, okay? So just know that, because some folks are applying and will be receiving no-cost extensions. So you have a final report due to ACL December 1st. As Caroline said, in November, I believe,
Yes.
the draft capstone. So first comes November, draft capstone. December 1st is your final report that does go up to Grant Solutions and to your project officer and to Caroline. And then the final capstone is due December 31st. So each one is 1 month apart. We try to space it out so that everything wouldn't be due at the same time, and that you could focus on each respective project report, you know, in turn. I do want to make one little tweak to what Caroline shared with you, which is your capstones should only go to me and to Caroline, not to your respective project officer if you have somebody else. We don't want to burden the rest of the team on the capstones. Really focus that with me as the project lead, the grant lead, and our resource center. So I hope that answered the question.
so
Wait, because we want to
just
have
distinguish, you've been working with Don. So when you say you, do you mean for ours, we send it to Don?
So your ACL report, which is a federal requirement, goes to your project officer, period. Your capstone, which is really a replication project, comes to me. And the Resource Center gets everything.
Judy, it's Martin. Where would we best sort of report the research components and the findings and those more sort of research and technical issues?
In the capstone,
In the capstone.
Sorry, Martin, what was that question?
Where would we report the basic research findings and the statistics and things that we learn about the usefulness and success and viability of a project?
Yes, good question. So that'll be under the project results, under that background and purpose page. Any other questions? Aaron's bringing that to you.
I guess we'll be doing all this next year, but just preparing ourselves mentally for all this.
Yes.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but with all the attachments of things we've created for the capstone, we send everything or just a snapshot of highlighted things?
Yes, good question. So this is different than your semi-annual report. I bet that's what you're thinking about. So when we had our recent semi-annual report, that was all project products produced within that period of time that then you would send. This capstone report, attachments and materials, that's different. So these attachments and materials, we only want you to provide us with materials that would be helpful for someone replicating your project. So that will not include all of the materials that you've probably submitted with other reports. This will just be attachments that someone replicating your project would need or would find very helpful once replicating.
Okay, got it. And then, is it okay if we watermark it when we send it to you? Just feels a little uneasy to send it not in the PDF version, because people could take it.
am I working?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, the materials that you present, that you create in this grant are shareable. They are not only yours. So you are making them available. You are making them in a way that others can utilize. In terms of watermark, Marissa might be better at answering that. The 508 compliance, I just want to take a moment. I'm representing ACL, the Administration for Community Living, and we really, really believe, and I know all of you believe, that no matter what someone's disability is, that they should have access to our materials and our resources. And so we believe that, but we don't know how to do it necessarily ourselves. So that's why the Resource Center has asked you to put your materials in raw but final form, so that they can then, if you don't necessarily have the technical expertise to make them 508 compliant, that they can. So Marissa, I don't know the answer about a watermark.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of what Judy said, I don't think a watermark is gonna be the best. What we can do is include like your logo on it to show that this is a product that you produced. The reason why we're asking for it in PowerPoint or Word form, so that raw form, is because that's the easiest to make 508 compliant. All of those accessibility features are built into Microsoft Word products. Once you guys move it to a PDF, it's harder for me to go in and then fix those little things. So that's why it is possible. If you only have it in PDF, I can. It's just easier and takes a little bit less time if I can do that in that raw form. Does that answer?
It does. We've created a lot of our things in Canva though, and when you export, it's PDF or another format, so that might be tricky.
Yeah. And with Canva, it does export it more as like an image. So then it's just, I'll have to add the alt text and different things like that. But you can send those things over in PDF, that's fine.
All right, good morning. So kind of going off of that question, so we're developing a nutrition education program that has like facilitator manual, participant workbook, and things of that nature. And ultimately, our goal is for organizations to work with us when implementing a program like that in the future. So kind of going off that question, if this is just available and organizations are just taking it and implementing it without kind of working with our organization, I guess that's where my concern is. Like, what would that look like?
So we have had situations where an organization developed a process, or they worked with a license, an organization has a licensed product. And so there's ways to indicate that in your replication materials. But I do want to say that, if you go back to your notice of funding opportunity and the notice of grant award, that, the products that were funded are to be publicly available. But you can indicate that to implement the program, organizations should contact you for a licensing or whatever applies.
Thank you.
Okay.
So in the grant document, I remember a requirement to develop a best practice toolkit. And is the Capstone project similar or the same as this requirement or different?
And I think your mic doesn't work.
Well, this gives me exercise. It's funny. Yes, the capstone does qualify, and several of you have mentioned that you really are interested and willing to develop literally this is how you do it, and that can be one of the products that you add to the products that you put into this capstone. So, when you think about the capstone materials, nobody knows anything about your project, right? So they go to your one pager and they go, oh, I'm interested. This sounds very cool. Okay, now I go to this more detailed, it's kind of like a guide, right? And the guide, as Caroline has said, is very brief, right? It's very brief. So if you can and are willing to have a more detailed guide that you can add as an attachment here, as a resource, that would be tremendous. That would be so helpful for other people. We didn't have it as a requirement.